Right, and this partly acknowledges that, listen, we need to be using attainable standards as opposed to be using um, ideal standards. And so, that in terms of ingredients, they tell us, listen, the standard quantity has been calculated on the basis that no chocolate is spoiled in production. That's what we have. So they're saying that they're giving us some information that last year the average level of wastage was 5%. So in terms of attainability, we want to incorporate. The key point here is we want to incorporate this knowledge that we now have, this 5% knowledge. So incorporate the 5%. I mean, this is what happened last. It says the average level. So incorporate 5% into the current um, materials allowance. And I think something else you want to do, if you like, is to engage workforce um, on sort of efficiency methods. Yeah, but when I say engage, you want to have discussions with them, if you like, as to how we can reduce wastage. You see, because if you're engaging with them, there's a likelihood that you can reduce. So if this is the average level of wastage, this is engaging them. I think the other thing you want to do is you want to look at the industry standards. What are the industry standards on wastage? Just because your wastage was 5% doesn't mean. I don't know how reasonable that is. I think the question really to be asking is, what are the industry standards on wastage? So you want to use that, and you want to actually have, and I don't know if it's in our syllabus. You want to actually have an idle, um, or a wastage variance, an idle variance. What does that mean? We have expected wastage versus actual wastage. So this is an actual point. You want to create a variance of expected wastage versus actual wastage, which means that, hey, what if they're actually doing well? Maybe the industry is actually 8%. So you're actually, and if this is your standard, you want to create a standard for wastage, right? And it means you can improve wastage. So attainable variances are not designed to just accept anything and everything, because in the end, you want to challenge your staff. Right, so that's that. Labor. So we're automating, and it tells us that the standard time to produce was set many years ago. So that's a basic. If you remember, that was a basic budget, wasn't it? And so that's old. It's not relevant. Not relevant. So in terms of recommending, what we want to do definitely is to adjust those figures. So we um, definitely want to adjust the standards to take into account this productivity gain. Um, Again, we want to implement an idle time additional extra time. Just put in extra time for idleness or tiredness with your staff, with the remaining labor that you have. It just says it's now more automated, so you still have labor working for you. And then you also want to measure that idle time. So expected definitely versus actual. So this, you always want this to be a standard answer you always have. You accept the fact that you have these additional variances, idle time, and then you set a standard for it and you compare it with what actually happens. But you definitely want to adjust your current variance. So this is two recommendations. You definitely want to adjust your current amount to take into account that labor productivity should fall by 20%. Yes, and I believe that is you see your labor. So technically, you really should be. Oops, sorry, that's not writing. I want to change this. 1 pound 50. Oops. Let's do over there. Do this over here. I want to multiply this by 0.8. So my new figure should be this. But I also want to make sure I take into account any idle variances and set standards for those as well. That's how I would go with that. And I think that definitely should be fine. Again, I suppose training, and also understanding that initially, there's a question we do in the exam kit, if you remember, initially that you will need learning, you have a learning space or learning curve type thing, where you can set standards for a set number of units first and then set a different standard for the next number of units. So maybe, I don't know, whatever, if this is taking you 30 minutes per unit for the first 1,000 units, and then it's taking you 25 minutes for the next, if you like, after that, you can do that as well. So you can develop standards at different levels of output, right? You can do that, definitely. So that's another point. Develop standards at different levels of output. Okay, great stuff.